I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up. Welcome, everyone, to the Will Carr Speaks podcast. Today's episode, I sit down with Dr. Sam Shay, DC, functional medicine professional, and I get to talk with him about several different things. So not only is Dr. Sam a functional medicine expert, but he also runs a genetics testing company where we really dive in and talk about how you understanding your genetics and how your personal genetics affect you, your body, for things like longevity, exercise, diet. There's so many things that go into us being healthy human beings, and our genetics are so important in understanding that, because just like a thumbprint, there's not any one of us that's identical to the other. So in this episode, we sit down and have this conversation. It's highly informational. I learned so much. I'll tell you, for one, after having this conversation, I'm definitely getting my genetics tested because I want to learn more about myself and I want to understand how I can optimize my health, because so much of genetics testing and health in general, like if you have something that's chronic that you want to fix, that's definitely an area that is affecting you and you want to get it fixed. But also for those of us that are healthy and we feel healthy, how can we optimize ourselves to not just feel good, but to be our actual best, and to be our best where we can live for a long time and feel great. So with that in mind, sit down, whether you're driving in your car or sitting at home, have a nice cup of tea and enjoy the show. Thanks for being here. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Will Carr Speaks. You can see I have a special guest host here with me today in my lap. This is actually my guest dog, Dr. Sam Shay, DC of certified functional medicine, and you also run a genetics company, and you're a chiropractor. A few things. I'll let you give kind of a little bit of better intro, because I chopped that up a little. I'm too entertained by your dog in my lap here.
Lily's a wonderful distraction, for sure. Yeah,
she is for sure. Yeah. Maybe she's been licking me a lot. I must have a lot of salt on my arms or something.
Yeah, well, she's field testing you to make sure you pass the salt test. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, I'm super interested to talk genetics with you today, and just kind of like the basics of that, because and I'm down to get into some deeper aspects of it as well. So do you want to just kind of give kind of a general overview of what you do with the genetics company?
Sure. So my company's called FitGenesUSA, FitGenes USA.com. The original company, FitGenes, is founded in Australia, and I'm the Western Hemisphere distributor for it. And cool. I got involved with them 10 years ago in 2016. And the reason why I'm so engaged in genetics is because it was a massive missing piece that radically changed my life and the lives of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with, to the point where I became the lead international educator for the company and designed and upgraded the new reports. And also I'm now training certified health professionals, certified health coaches, nutrition professionals, and licensed practitioners on how to bring these genetics tests into their practice. And the thing about genetics is that there's a lot of companies out there, but the problems that people run into is that when they do a functional genetics test, is that they get hundreds of genes, or they get very few, and they're just listing off all the confusing jargon and all the RSID numbers and all the different hexadecimal hieroglyphics that come. People don't know how to interpret it, and it's hard to read. And it feels either there's really not actionable information, or there's too many things. Like you run 300 genes and get 300 health tips. It's overwhelming and confusing. So the difference is that with FitGenesUSA, what we've done is prioritize the genes so that you're working on the most important things first, so that you're not given 300 health tips. You're given, here's the top 5 of this thing, the top 10 of this, the top of et cetera, et cetera. So you actually know what to do in what order to optimize your diet, to optimize your exercise, optimize your recovery, and optimize your nutrition. So in genetics, what people typically think about is that, well, is this about what my genealogy, like, is what percentage Irish I am? It's like, no,
right. We think
it's
of 23andMe. We think of we think of how tall are we? What's our hair color?
Exactly. So there's roughly 4 types of genetics tests, and what I do is and teach is only one of them. So the first type is, what percentage Irish are you? That's genealogy.
Yeah.
The second type of genetics test is who's your daddy?
Yeah.
That's paternity.
Okay.
The third type of genetics test is kind of medical pathology testing. Like, do you have trisomy 21, Huntington's disease? Do you have some hard-coded thing that is really meaningful and significant that's going to show up?
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is not that. We're doing what's called functional genetics testing, where we're looking at the genes that you can change through lifestyle, diet, and nutrition. Not change your genes per se, but change how they express. So if you've got twins, they have identical genes, but you have one with a great lifestyle, diet, sleep, exercise, good social life, etc. And then you've got another that is alone, isolated, eating junk food, poor sleep, staying up late, on the computer all the time, not exercising, a hermit, stressed out. Again, identical genes, completely different health expressions. So that's good news, is because whatever your genes are, you can do something about them to make them behave differently. Most people think of genetics as a switch. It's either on or it's off. Yeah. The reality is it's more a dial. Mm-hmm. And so people have, say, around inflammation, they've got, some people's dials are preset to default to hyperinflamer. Some people's are preset over to anti-inflamer. Okay. And like for me, I'm a hyperinflamer. There's 16, the most important genes for inflammation, there's 16 of them. I mean, there's hundreds of genes overall that directly influence inflammation or indirectly. But there's really, you want to look at the top most important ones. And of the 16, I have 14 out of the 16 that are in the bad zone, so to speak, hyperinflammers. Yeah. So, which explained why I was so chronically ill growing up and why I've struggled so much with my health compared to other people who are in the similar environment or similar diet or similar lifestyle. And it's one of the reasons why, or really the main reason why, I got into natural medicine. Okay. I was supposed to be the 3rd generation medical doctor in my family, but I pivoted into natural medicine in late high school when I found a mentor and a book on natural medicine.
What was that book?
Dr. Jensen's Guide to Better Bowel Care. Because when I was growing up, starting at age 6 is when my chronic health issues started. I had severe bowel issues, like
IBS, or
it was constipation where I couldn't go except every 3 to 5 days. Very embarrassing gas, poor digestion, bloating. My breath stank. I was just like sickly, pale, distended in certain, and just my ignorant medical doctor parents and my pediatrician thought that going once every 3 to 5 days was quote unquote normal. Again, this is the 80s, where the parenting style back then was mostly SSRIs, TV, and emotional neglect. Right. And back then, doctors were still considered gods, and you couldn't question them. Right. And their advice was really just whatever the latest pharmaceutical company was dictating to them that would push sales. So my parents, both being medical doctors, didn't know anything about nutrition in the 80s. Even better, they were psychiatrists. So to them, any health problem was a mind problem. And they didn't take any of the issues growing up seriously. Like, there was a lot of violence in school. There was massive sleep deprivation from the stress at school. My parents had a wicked divorce when I was 6, and that I was caught in the blast radius of that. And they fed this terrible diet of just processed foods, They literally said my cholesterol was too high at age 6. They said my cholesterol was too high as a child. And they put me on a low carb, high fat diet, high carb, low fat diet. And it's like SpaghettiOs, ramen noodles, boxed cereals and
Oh my gosh.
Folgers coffee, and like it was
recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
There.
And then I found out later when I was 36 that genetically I am actually better suited for a low carb paleo borderline keto diet.
Yeah.
So right now you can genetically test, and this is one of the unique things my company offers. You can genetically test if you're ideally suited genetically for a more keto, paleo, Mediterranean, or higher carb style diet. You can actually answer this question now genetically. You don't need to debate between the carnivores and the vegans or whatever. That you don't have to do that anymore.
How much is this like connected to, you know, I haven't read the whole book, but I've read clips of like the blood type diet.
So D'Adamo actually has given up on his blood type diet and is now selling the genomic diet. If that gives you any insight.
Yeah. So this is like the next evolution of that.
Correct.
Essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at genetics, let's talk about carb tolerance. So for anyone listening who wants to optimize their performance, or then you want to know what your optimal diet is. And I'll give you, for athletics. I have a client of mine who is an amateur tennis player. Now, if you know anything about tennis players, they're like some of the most athletic people on the planet.
Yeah.
And even the amateurs, they're incredibly athletic. We'd run his genetics test, and we were meeting up to chat and go over it. And before I even told him what his results were on his carb tolerance, he started to tell me, he's like, man, you know, between the time I did the test and getting the results, like my buddies, like they like really pushed me to do keto. And like, man, I felt, and I interrupted him and said, under no circumstances should you be doing keto. And he says, you have, and I said, I'm sorry your buddies keto shamed you into doing keto. And I said, you should not, genetically, you are not suited for, other people are, but you're not. And he just like stared at me and said, I knew it. Oh my God. I was like fainting on court. I was feeling awful. Like I couldn't focus. I had no energy. And I said, that makes a lot of sense to me, because based on your genetics, you have a very, very high carb tolerance, and you will do better on a higher carb diet. So to make this really practical, imagine your intestines, your gut is a fort.
Yeah.
Now imagine carbs charging the fort are Vikings. Carbs charging your gut are Vikings charging the fort. Mm-hmm. The number of cannons you have lining the fort is important, because the more cannons you have, the more you can mow down those Vikings / carbs charging your fort / your gut. Mm-hmm. So in genetics, people hear about, well, there's the good version of the gene and the bad version of the gene. This is different. This is the number of copies of this specific gene that makes the enzyme called amylase that breaks down carbohydrates in the saliva. So the first contact of carbohydrates to your digestive system is the enzyme amylase that's made predominantly by the parotid gland in the saliva to break down carbs, the first step when you start chewing. The more copies of this gene you have, the more enzyme you make. And it's additive. If I've got one copy of this gene, I make 1x the amount of amylase. If I have 10 copies of this gene, I make approximately 10x. If I have 20 copies, I have 20x. So you can have between 1 and 20 copies of this gene. The higher number of copies you have, the more cannons, in this metaphor, you have to make the cannon fodder to mow down these carbs / Vikings. Mm-hmm. So between 1 and 20, the people who are really low carb, I've had only maybe a half dozen people with 1 copy in my entire 10-year career. Those are straight up, like they're way more better suited for keto, those people. The 2 to 4s, those are more paleo style. Mm-hmm. The 5 to 8s are Mediterranean. Now, there's even a range, like a 5.
Right.
An 8 is almost is not quite double the amount of carb tolerance to a 5. A 4 in a paleo is double the amount of carb tolerance to a 2. It's not a lot, but it's still double. Higher carb people are 9 and above. This guy who was keto shamed had 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's pretty rare.
Yeah. What's the highest it can be?
20.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been like some ultra bizarre extremes where I think the highest found was like 22, something like really like super out there. But so for me, like remember I was raised on a high carb, low fat diet. And now when I did my genetics test in 2016, at the time it was like a perfect organic Portlandia Mediterranean diet where I knew the names of my farmers and their chickens.
Yeah.
You know,
all the Boulder things.
I know all the Boulder things. It was so Boulder. And like the quinoa I got was grown, by left-handed monks, and each grain was air delivered by a newly hatched monarch butterfly and sung to as it landed. And I sprouted it for 3 days. Oh, we're using crystalline water. You get the point. We can go on for hours. But the fun thing about being a stand-up comic is when you write stuff about Boulder, it writes itself.
No kidding.
It is like cheating to write comedy about Boulder.
Yeah, that was the other thing to mention about you. I should have said in the intro that you're a stand-up comic.
Yeah. So thank you. My if we'll bookmark that bit of the conversation. But for people who are interested, you can just Google Dr. Sam Shay Neurospicy, or actually go to YouTube. I have a free 1-hour show called Neurospicy: Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum, which is the hour I wish I had 40 years ago to share with my friends, my family, my community, doctors, the schools, to explain what it's like to have a version of autism called Asperger's syndrome. And there's no cursing, there's no politics, there's no gratuitous body fluid jokes. It's clean observational comedy that actually brings normies and spectrum folk together. It's comedy is actually my advocacy and my education work. It's how I want to make change in a very palatable, deliverable way, which is, I think, the best way is through comedy.
Yeah.
So when I was 36, when I got my genetics test, I've been eating this perfect Portlandia diet. When on reflection, it was more like the equivalent of a carb tolerance of like a 6 or a 7. Like I was eating in kind of a mid-range Mediterranean. And I was having all of these like fluctuations in energy, mood, and digestive issues throughout the day. And then when I got my carb results back, my carb tolerance was a grand total of a 2. Okay. The second lowest possible. Yeah. Now, within 1 week of changing my diet to my carb tolerance, my digestion, mood, and energy leveled out. And I was not a quality issue. It was all organic, local, all that stuff. It was a quantity issue. I just could not genetically tolerate that volume of carbs. Yeah. And I know people who are athletes who are in the 2s to 4s. I know this guy, he's in 13. Yeah. And it's the diet, people should have the optimal diet for their sport.
For them, yeah.
Yeah. And now we can actually genetically test for meaningful variables, carb tolerance being the chief among them. Then you've got genetic testing for caffeine-induced anxiety and depression.
Interesting.
Now, I have a big now we're back to the genes. That's just, is it a good version or a bad version or a super bad version? So genes can have green, yellow, red, and yellow is bad, red the jargon and interpretation of it is like some people say it's less optimal or suboptimal or least optimal, or everyone assigns their thing. But an easiest way to think about it is like yellow bad, red really bad. Okay. There are a couple rare exceptions to that, but in general, like an exercise fiber type, like you can check your fiber type. Are you a sprinter? Are you an endurance or intermediate? They still have the designations of red, yellow, and green. Like red is considered a slow twitch fiber. I don't think that's bad. Red is not. You don't have a bad muscle type if you're endurance.
Right. It's just the muscle type you are.
It's just the nomenclature that they've used in genetics. Right. So green is sprinter, yellow's intermediate. It doesn't mean in that case yellow is less bad. It's just designated that way. So, but in this case, when we're coming to caffeine sensitivity, I have bright reds in this. So I've been drinking coffee since I was 6 years old because I had such bad insomnia. I literally was on coffee to try to stay awake in school, like in kindergarten. Now, I was also dealing with, as a child, not just digestive issues. I was also dealing with anxiety and depression from all the violence at school and the gaslighting at home. But what I didn't realize until I got my genetics test is that caffeine
Was bad for you.
was meaningfully contributing to the anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
Now, if I had known that at age 6, as opposed to 36,
Right.
my whole quality of life would have been different. If I had known at age 6 instead of 36 about my carb tolerance,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been a lot healthier. I might have actually had a growth spurt because I never had one. I might have actually been more sturdy, more resilient, looking less pale, being less sick. And I would have also been less of a target of the kids in school because I would have actually been,
Optimized for your,
exactly.
the type of diet that you needed.
Totally.
Yeah.
Other things that I found out was that I was a hyperinflamer. I mentioned those 14 out of 6. Now, I had chronic pain my whole life, mostly from the injuries I sustained in school that were left untreated. And then later on, I developed joint pain across my fingers like an old man. So I'm in my mid-30s and I have pain in my joints like an 80-year-old man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I learned that I was a hyperinflamer, and then the thing about genetics, it's not just learning, oh, you're messed up in this particular way. Oh, well, that sucks for you. The genes that are chosen here, you can actually do something about. You can change the dial. Like the genes may default to red, but you can change your lifestyle. Like those twins, they have a better lifestyle. You can make the red dotted genes behave more green-like. That's what epigenetics is. That's the good news.
So how do you do that? Like how does that work?
It depends on the genes. So like with the inflammatory genes, like you look at the cluster of the genes, and what you look for and what makes this test unique, what you look for is what are the fewest number of lifestyle recommendations that beneficially influence the most number of the highest priority genes. So if I've got 14 genes that are red and yellow dots, I don't want to do 14 separate things.
Right.
I want maybe 5 things where one affects 12, one affects 10, one affects another 10, one affects 8, one affects 7.
Yeah.
And that way I only do a handful of things. And then between all of them, it affects either all of them, but definitely a ton of them in multiple ways, helping move the needle through multiple different mechanisms. So for some people that may be, like in my case, one of the recommendations was higher dose fish oil. Now, there's a term in supplementation that most people don't know about. It's called nutrigenomic dosing. Okay. Nutritional dosing is not this. Nutritional dosing is like, oh, here's your gram of fish oil, which is what I've been doing for over a decade, and I'm still having joint pain. Nutritional dosing is, I'm going to throw fish oil into the existing anti-inflammatory machinery, and that's great. Nutrigenomic dosing is where I give much more fish oil, and it doesn't just throw widgets into the machinery. It changes the machinery. Okay. That's the difference. Yeah. So it took only a couple months of much higher amounts of fish oil for my all my pain in my fingers to go away and stay away, because what I was doing was changing my body's relationship to inflammation as such. It wasn't just merely trying to dampen down on the inflammatory machinery. It changed the entire machinery setup.
So that's where things like these genetic tests can really come into play. Like I've been seeing like commercials and stuff for a lot of tests, specifically like genetic tests for what supplements you should take. Like, because a lot of people are saying, you might be taking supplements that you think are good for you, but does your body really need them? Or are you going to react to them in a good way? We don't really know unless we test our genes.
Well, genes provide a really meaningful window into supplements. It's not the only window. Okay. But in my case, like the fish oil was one example where genetics was the one that really figured that out. Yeah. So when it comes to genetics,
you just needed more.
I needed more because I was a hyperinflamer, and the 1 gram recommendation was woefully insufficient for my particular genes. So one of the things that we do in the Fit Genes report is identify the top 5 nutrients that people need genetically. So for people who are like health coaches that are listening to this, or certified fitness professionals or licensed practitioners, or they're aspiring to be, the report doesn't tell you what brand or what product to buy. It lists the ingredients from the scientific papers. Like, okay, this person needs more fish oil based on the research. This person needs more sulforaphane. This person needs more superoxide dismutase inducers. This person needs more vitamin D or antihistamine nutrients, or they're needing more magnesium, or they're needing more whatever. There's the collagen, because they may have weaker collagen genes. They may need more vitamin C because their vitamin C genes need some more support, or more. They got to pay attention to more zinc because their zinc transport mechanisms, or their B12 because their B12 transport mechanisms are struggling, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So they've got the genetics will tell you where probabilistically you are likely to need more nutrients, because your machinery is just a set of machinery that just will in general need more nutrients.
Yeah. Like some engines run on gas, some engines run on diesel.
Yeah.
Some run on French fry oil.
I actually know a guy in college. He was in my, he built his business in college by using one of the bathtubs that no one used in the dorms to convert vegetable oil into biodiesel. And he like started his biodiesel business
That's awesome.
in 1999.
Yeah.
You know, just in the freaking dorm bathtub. And like, good for him, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. You literally just go around town to all the restaurants, just collect their rancid oil and then bring it up.
They were happy for him to say
totally.
that.
And then he would just make biodiesel out of it, you know? So
yeah.
it was kind of a win-win. So
Yeah.
Probably the most forward-thinking entrepreneur in school at the time. Yeah.
Totally. I have some specific questions, because
Go for it.
like, so myself as a kid, I would, and I'd always kind of attributed this to like, you know, my red hair Irish descent. But when
just so you know what percentage Irish you, I say that with every interview.
Yeah,
That wasn't just because you're sitting
yeah.
across from me.
No, that's okay. I got the red beard thing going on, man. It's definitely. So
my comedy instructor's a redhead from Ireland, and she makes all of the redhead jokes, you know, on stage. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, but so like I used to get, like I would get really red when I would exercise. Obviously, I'm an athlete. I played a lot of different sports. My skin would turn really red, which I imagine is like an inflammation thing.
Yeah. So you may have hypersensitivity to histamine.
Okay.
And so, and you also may vasodilate quite a lot. So your vasodilation genes are, I mean, it's, if you can vasodilate really easily, then you can suddenly like push more blood into your muscles, which will then help your athleticism. So, and then, so if your genes are pushing more blood flow, and you got to do that by opening the gate, so to speak, to let more in, that would make sense. So you may also have, I don't know, I haven't run your genes, but it's like you may also have histamine sensitivity, where the histamine is the body's emergency flood switch. Where if you've got like, if you get a bee sting, like, are you sensitive to bee stings?
I've had a bee sting. My whole foot swelled up really bad when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I had a thing where a bunch of wasps stung my arm, and my arm swelled up pretty decent as well.
Okay. And so, and when you like run your finger along your arm, does it like create a little like visible line or a welt or something?
No, I wouldn't say like a welt.
No, I'm gonna say not a welt. I mean like a streak. Does it like really, if you run it across?
I don't know.
Your nails aren't very sharp.
No, I'm a nail biter.
Okay, yeah, all right. So bad experiment.
We tried.
Retry later. You just take your fang and just like draw it right across there. So there's so typical signs of active histamine intolerance. Some people can have just genetically dormant, but active histamine intolerance are, or when it's emergent, like you get a bee sting, like it's really an exuberant swelling response.
Yeah.
Some people, when they eat a lot of high histamine foods like chocolate, avocados, leftovers, sauerkraut, aged meats, aged cheeses, they can get headaches, foggy brain, bloating, put on water weight, and feel it's just like the history. Like I get headaches from chocolate if I eat too much of it, which is a histamine response. So the thing about histamine is that it's the body's emergency flood switch. That if a bee stings your arm, the bee did not inject a half quart of water into your arm. The bee didn't do that. What it did is it injected a very concentrated bolus of venom, which could corrode and erode muscle tissue and like hurt, like damage your body.
Yep.
And so the body's like, oh, poison, quick, drown it, dilute it. And so histamine is the flood switch to rapidly dunk a whole bunch of water onto that local area. And that's why people will swell up from a bee sting, a wasp sting, a spider bite, snake bite, centipede, certain plants, whatever. And so if people are hypersensitive genetically to histamine, it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off where you've got, on the one hand, you want to have a response where your body will flood the zone with water when you got venom introduced. But if you swell too much, you can cut off circulation and blood flow and nerve flow to the body part, or your throat can swell up.
Yeah.
So it's all things trade-off in evolutionary psychology and evolutionary biology. You want to have some variation in the population of how they're going to react, because if there's too much of a histamine response, that could be a problem. If there's too little, that can also be a problem, because you don't have enough ability to drown out the venom, and then the venom's going to be the problem. So for people who are that was
I'm getting a lot of love from Lily over here.
That was not Will's stomach. That was
no. Although I am hungry, I'll be ready to eat after this. But yeah, no, that was Lily. Yeah, Lily's being
she looks
awesome.
like a Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. So yeah, if you've got so as an athlete, and histamine is part of the inflammatory response. I mean, it's just a branch of it.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so that's where I would go when you tell me like you just like get all red and from a big day of athleticism.
Yeah, interesting. Next thing is, I imagine there's a lot of people. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that deal with digestive issues, and like I dated a girl for a while who she said she would only poop once a month. Which is crazy.
That's
and
dangerous.
I would tell her, I'd be like, I don't think that's healthy. Like, it's not. I don't know how you look as good as you do. Like, because that can't be a good thing. And so, I imagine there's a component of it that is strictly diet, but also at the same time, probably a lot of like someone like that really needs to have their genetics test to know how they need to fix their diet in order to fix something like that.
Yeah, well, if someone's got stasis in their intestines, like that there may be a lot of additional workup. It's not. I don't think a genetics test alone would be able to support someone like that. I mean, I would if that was that would be a lot more of an in-depth conversation. Other additional testing, possibly need to do some scope. Like that's a whole. That's a very extreme situation. That's a medical that's like a medical situation. Like pooping once a month is not good news. So the genetic component I can speak to. So I mean, there's many reasons why people could be that constipated. One, they could be born with something called Hirschsprung's disease, which is a genetic issue, but that's a pathological genetic issue, not a functional genetic issue. A pathological genetic issue is they're born. They're having problems with their intestines' own capacity to contract to actually push stool out, and that's a genetic thing. They're just missing a component. The functional side, which is where like more the dial thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So for someone who's struggling with digestion, and I think let's kind of separate out that example of that's extreme 1 month. That's more that's a medical pathology thing. So that I would definitely be referring out for that to get some scoping and all the rest of it. But other things that could affect constipation from a genetic standpoint is if someone is a hyperinflamer and they are a lot of the inflammation actually comes from the gut. Yeah. Most of the inflammation is actually generated from the gut, from things that we eat that can create inflammation, that can cause dysregulation in how people move their bowels. Other things that can go on is that the people are eating incorrectly for their carb tolerance.
Yeah.
Then they're going to have digestive reactions to the density of the carbs they have. If people are, I mean, it can be something simple, something straightforward as like they're not hydrating well enough, and they're not. Part of diet is hydration, and for people who Some people with a stronger, I mean, you talked about yourself. Like, I'm sure you sweated more than other people.
Yeah. Heavy,
Okay.
yeah.
So
heavy sweater.
you're genetically you may be at higher risk of dehydration simply because you just off gas more. That's the wrong word, but you off gas more water. And then there's other dietary things that can affect it. So some people, if they are lactose intolerant genetically, then they could have more kind of diarrhea type situations. People who are genetically vulnerable to overeating, and there's actual genes that regulate satiety if you're feeling full. So feeling full is in the brain, not the stomach. Feeling full is a signal from the stomach to the brain that's genetically mediated. So there's a couple of genes like LEPR, MC4R, FTO genes. Like these are genes that strongly influence the feeling of satiety. People who don't feel full from normal amounts of food and they overeat, they can overeat the wrong foods that can constipate them. There's also people that there's a different genes that look at sugar cravings. Some people genetically crave more sugar. Some people genetically overconsume more sugar. And if you overcrave and or overconsume sugar, then you can disrupt the gut microbiome in your gut and enable, bad bugs to grow and create, candida, some other things. And so you can have, from your genetics, it's going to alter your eating behaviors, which will then influence your gut and your digestion. The other things are that if people are genetically more prone to inflammation, then they may feel more physical pain when they're doing exercise. And so they may move less, which then stimulates their bowels less. And so they may not have as good a digestion as they could otherwise have.
Interesting.
So there's a couple routes into it. Other things like there's genes that regulate mood. The inflammatory genes affect mood because if your brain's inflamed, you're gonna have darker thoughts. There's also other genes like COMT and MAOA genes that influence your mood. And for people who are lower mood, they may emotionally eat more. And if they emotionally eat more, then that's going to influence their digestion.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. You talked about caffeine. Like I'm someone, I love my coffee and I drink a lot of coffee. What happened to my coffee, Trent? No, I'm kidding. But it's 5:30 in the afternoon. I don't need coffee right now. But I would drink a coffee. I guess where I'm going with this is, coffee's like, I feel like in the last decade or more, I mean, it's even become way more popular than it used to be. So how I guess there's no way to really know how that coffee's affecting you other than we have our anecdotal stuff. Like we know how we feel when we ingest certain things. And if people are,
well, that's assuming people take their signals seriously and they even have the sensitivity to feel their signals. So I'm releasing the FitGenes podcast in June.
Yeah.
So the very first episode I recorded was on caffeine sensitivity.
Yeah.
Over an hour going through the science and the practicality of understanding and navigating caffeine sensitivity and the main genes associated with that and practically think what to do. So if you want the really long version, that's going to be coming out in next month.
Cool.
As of the date we're
I'll
recording.
definitely be giving that a listen.
Yeah. And look, you're the thing about coffee, it's really caffeine that is about the genetics. Coffee itself has its own variables because you can get caffeine from matcha, from tea. Chocolate is a very close cousin of it. It's called theobromine. It's not theobromine and caffeine are only one methyl group difference. It's one carbon and 3 hydrogens difference on the I can't remember which carbon, like third or fourth or fifth carbon on those. I can see the molecule. I just can't remember the counting nomenclature. But we isolated caffeine from tea leaves in organic chemistry in college back in 2000.
Cool.
And it's and like the caffeine and theobromine are very, very similar. That's one of the reasons people can feel up from taking a lot of chocolate. So the other thing about coffee is that it's got a lot of histamine in it.
Interesting.
So some people can the histamine can be problematic from coffee. But a lot of coffee, like there's a lot of research on some of the beneficial components of coffee. There's tons of that. But there's also people who just can't tolerate the histamine in coffee, or they can't tolerate the caffeine in coffee, or their coffee is moldy.
Oh, yeah.
And which causes a whole bunch of problems. And so I was a big red dot. And in coffee, I don't care how bulletproof I made my coffee. I had tons of coconut oil and cinnamon and like 5 other things, 10 other things I put in it to make this very fancy, like adrenal liver detox mochaccino.
Yeah.
You know, like mochaccino Moroccan coffee thing. Like when I got all the ratios right, it tasted amazing. But I would have what I thought was, oh, look at all this energy. I was really kidding myself. It was a mild anxiety attack.
Interesting.
That's what I meant by like, if you have this sensitivity and you're not kidding yourself. I was kidding myself for 3 decades.
Yeah.
I was doing this, and it took.
So you don't drink any coffee anymore at all?
No, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink caffeine. And if in the rare occasions I do, I treat it like it's a medication. Like I am so tired for whatever reason, like I'm traveling or whatever, and I need a boost in 20 minutes, and I know it's going to cost me, but the cost benefit analysis of the transient spike in energy it's really, caffeine doesn't give you energy. It really masks tiredness. That's one of the things I cover in the podcast. I need the false energy boost because the cost benefit analysis merits that, and I'm going to pay for it later, but at least I'm conscious of it and I'm choosing it. And I'm not kidding myself. So I treat caffeine like a drug. Like it's for emergency use only. Yeah. And then I suggest other alternatives that are like either caffeine free, or like there's these herbal, like dandelion and chicory, and like there's other things out there that can approximate the flavor of coffee by 60 to 80%, but without the caffeine.
Right.
Yeah.
What about something, because I would almost consider something like this a replacement for caffeine, but something that I've been using in mild amounts over the last year or so is nicotine. So, which is interesting because I'm just now getting to the point where like a 3 milligram Zen or something will affect me less. Is something like nicotine something that you test for in genetics?
I don't. So I don't test. The panel that I test for is about 140 genes. Okay. It's not thousands and thousands. Yeah. So nicotine is not on that list. The reason why these genes were chosen is because they had to fulfill very specific criteria. And so these two genetics tests, the carb tolerance one's a separate one because it's a different machine and to check for the number of copies of that canons. Yeah. And then there's the variation test of the 140 odd red, yellow, green dotted ones that cover exercise, diet, and then the longevity. So the criteria for these other ones was, for the longevity ones, we're looking at what are the genes that control the drivers of chronic disease, not the chronic disease genes themselves. Yeah. I mean, most people, when they think of genetics, they're thinking of, do I have the heart disease gene, the cancer gene, the dementia gene, the stroke gene, the diabetes gene. That's Western medical genetic thinking. That's not what we're doing. Instead, we're looking at what are the drivers that sit above those quote unquote disease genes.
Because that's what causes those genes to activate.
Correct. So we're looking at what are the drivers, and there's 7 drivers in order of priority. Is inflammation, primary driver. Then it's the genes that scavenge free radicals in the mitochondria, the energy factory of the cell. Like if your factory for making electricity catches on fire, that's bad. Yeah. Imagine like the whole electrical grid of Denver went down. It'd be 3 days before it turned full Mad Max.
Yeah, if even, man.
Yeah. So it's inflammation, then the free radical damage scavenging in the mitochondria, then it's liver detox, then it's vitamin D receptors, which is how well you can use vitamin D. Then it's methylation. Methylation is priority 5, not 1, 5. Then you have cardiovascular circulation. Then you have fat and energy metabolism. So I'm looking at a whole chunk of genes that are only about those drivers. Because if you upset those drivers, those genes, then they will poke on the disease genes downstream. So I want to look at only genes that are in those 7 categories. Then I only want to look at the most important genes within those categories. That's why I'm looking at 16 inflammatory genes, not 160. I'm looking at only 3 mitochondrial scavenging genes for scavenging for genes that scavenge free radicals in the mitochondria, because in the mitochondria is where 95% of all the free radicals are generated.
Interesting.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
The main gene to scavenge free radicals in the mitochondria is called MNSOD. Stands for manganese superoxide dismutase. That's for those of you still in biochem class and the Scrabble enthusiasts. Manganese superoxide dismutase. MNSOD. I call it Mr. SOD. Mr. SOD is the head janitor of the mitochondria. Mr. SOD is running around grabbing all the free radicals or the sparks to make sure the factory doesn't catch on fire. That's Mr. SOD.
Yep.
There are 3 total SOD enzymes, SOD1, 2, and 3. MNSOD is SOD2. SOD1 and 3 are dealing with the other 5%. I'm not actually interested in the 2 genes that are dealing with only 5%. I'm interested in the 1 gene that's doing 95% of the work.
Right.
That's why I'm talking about prioritization.
Yep.
Why would I waste my time figuring out supplementation for SOD1 and 3?
Exactly.
Why would I even do that?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at SOD2 and its 2 subordinate janitors, catalase and glutathione peroxidase. So you're looking at a few genes there. You're looking at about a half dozen major genes for liver detox, 2 genes for vitamin D receptor, 12 genes for methylation, not 1 for MTHFR. That one's got undue purchase in the consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. You're looking at highest priority. You're looking at the genes in the drivers, the highest priority genes in those drivers. Then you're looking at, of those genes, which ones show up in at least 10% as red or yellow dots in the general population. So I'm not testing for an obscure gene that's like 0.0001% of the population.
Yeah.
Then the last criteria is I'm looking for only genes that are left that have peer-reviewed scientific articles done on humans, not wombats or nematodes, that show that exercise, diet, and nutrition can shift the dial. So it's those 4 criteria. So you boil down from like 20, 25,000 genes down to about 100.
Yeah.
That fill all 4 of those criteria. And then you've got other sets of genes that look specifically at diet, your relationship to gluten, to lactose, to caffeine, to salt, to alcohol. Important gene to find out if
That's
you're
a really important one. Yeah.
a huge one, especially if you're in college.
Yeah.
Like you want to know if alcohol is genuinely really bad for you.
Yeah.
And because what you don't want to do is end up with complications later on. And there are now is a budding. I mean, look, alcohol consumption is dropping precipitously across the United States anyway, at least in the past 5-10 years.
Yeah.
But you want to know your genetic relationship to alcohol, your relationship to caffeine, your relationship to histamine, your relationship to food allergens. If you need to, try an elimination diet, and your genetic relationship to eating behaviors, your genes around satiety, sugar cravings, sugar consumption, your relationship to the flavor of bitter. Some people, if they are oversensitive to the flavor of bitter, they will eat 50 to 100, 150 pounds fewer healthy bitter vegetables a year because they just don't like the taste of it. Yeah. And so if you're averse to bitter, I've identified 4 separate ways to cook vegetables to kill the bitter flavor. Gordon Ramsay would be super proud of me.
Yeah.
And so if like, and some people listening, so wait, if I overeat, well, then it's my genes. What can I do? No. What you do is you control your environment, not your willpower.
Yep.
I have the gene for low satiety. So what does control my environment? I am not stronger than bread. Yeah. But I am smarter than bread.
Yeah. You don't buy it at the grocery store.
If I buy it, half of the bread won't make it from the grocery store to my car. The other half won't make it from my car to the fridge. I will just eat it. So I just don't buy it. That's me controlling my environment. Willpower will fail. It will fail. Just a matter of time. So I control my environment. So I can't fail. I just don't buy the things that I'm at risk of reaching for.
Yeah. Well, we live in this world now where a lot of people are talking about peptides. So I have a friend who's really big into peptides, and I was at a networking event last night, and I was talking to a guy, and he was telling me about all these different, he's throwing all these numbers and letters at me. Kind of like you with the genetic things here. It's like all these letters and numbers. That's interesting.
Impressive, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to remember what that gene is.
Don't I feel empowered, right?
But how do you, I take it from your, your initial energetic reaction I felt from you. You're not a huge fan of peptides.
No, it's not that I'm not a huge fan. It's just they have to be put in their proper place.
Yeah.
So
because I imagine there's a lot with
they're a tool.
Yeah, with genes and stuff that
there's a lot of potential there. But the thing I want people to it's a mindset thing. It's a philosophy. When people talk about peptides, they are actually engaging almost always in a pharmaceutical model, but using a natural or quasi-natural substitute.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing in the miracle bullet, I'm going to solve the thing and I don't have to look at my lifestyle. And I'm just going to take this magic non-medication, but it's natural because we call it a peptide.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the efficacy couldn't be there. I have friends of mine who have helped regenerate joints. People have helped with their sleep. I've tried peptides to deal with some bouts of insomnia that have come in, and I had a paradoxical effect. I got 3.5 hours of sleep from doing DSIP, as opposed to having more deep sleep. It actually screwed up my sleep.
Interesting.
So they're a tool, and tools you have to evaluate. Is it safe? Is it effective in the long term and the short term? And then what's your plan to get off of it?
Yeah.
Those are the 5 criteria you need to evaluate literally every tool, whether it's a diet change, a supplement, a drug, a peptide, anything else. So I am not anti-Western medicine. I am not anti-medication. I am not anti-surgery. I am anti the overuse and abuse and misuse of it, and frankly, any other tool.
Of anything, yeah.
Of anything. So the philosophy of Western medicine, and this is like, if people, like you mentioned, you've got a lot of college students who listen to this, like, right?
Yep.
So like, I'm gonna give one of the most important overarching frameworks to understand medicine for the entire rest of your life. Western medicine philosophically was born out of triage, out of World War I. Triage is, are you going to lose an eye, an arm, a limb, a function, or your life? No?
Yeah.
Then move over. Here's a painkiller if we got it, but stop whining. Other people have more serious conditions we need to deal with. That is triaging.
Yeah.
Who is the real emergency? Western medicine philosophically is emergency care. It is getting people from crisis to stability.
Yeah.
Functional medicine is helping people go not from crisis to stability, but from chronic to normal, normal to optimal.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
They're different tools. They're different approaches. They're different lenses. They're different philosophies. So the problem is not Western philosophy versus functional medicine philosophy. The problem is mission creep into the other side of the sandbox. The tools of functional medicine are deeply inappropriate in the emergency room, and the tools of the emergency room are deeply inappropriate for getting someone from normal to optimal, and from chronic to normal.
Yeah.
So that's why I can evaluate things honestly based on the safety and utility, short-term and long-term, of the tool, and is there a plan to get you off the need of the tool? So if you use peptides, but there's no plan to get off them, and there's no plan to figure out why you needed them in the first place, and you're doing them as a Band-Aid thing, just to solve, then you're treating it like a medication. It's not actually natural. It's a natural compound being used as a pharmaceutical method.
Yeah.
And again, it can be life-changing, and in this particular unique, specific, anecdotal case of me, from this one particular peptide, for this one particular situation, a complete paradoxical backfire.
Yeah.
So, and every supplement and every tool has gone through its glittery phase. In the 2000s, in the 1990s, it was fish oil. We talked about right at the beginning.
Right.
1990s was fish oil.
My mom being like, "That's the most important thing. You got to make sure you get your fish
2000s,
oil supplement."
It was vitamin D. In the 2000s, vitamin D.
Yeah.
2010s, it was probiotics, and then we have NAD, NMN, and then all this burst of whether it was goji berry juice or whatever. And then coconut oil had its day, and then now we're careening full steam ahead into nicotine and peptides. And is there efficacy involved for people that it can be really beneficial? Yes. And again, what's the safety profile for that person, long-term, short-term? What's the plan to get off, and why would you need it in the first place?
Yeah.
And so if you have this criteria, now you can evaluate things properly. And the most important thing that people should be looking for is not chasing the tool. You should be chasing the map.
Yes.
Find the individual map. Find
Yep.
the blueprint, which is why I love genetics.
Yeah.
Because it is your personal, it's the most personalized map you can literally get.
Yeah.
And it's a permanent map because your genes don't change. Their expression can change, like that dial, like that twins study.
Yeah.
So you want to know what is your reality. And I like to say, I'm a fan of reality.
Yep.
I was not owning my reality around caffeine. I was ignorant of my reality around carbs. I did not understand my reality around inflammation. I didn't understand my reality about histamine intolerance. Like, I had a massive reality check around my life and my health when I did my genetics. I've had six, maybe 7 people completely quit alcohol when I showed them their genetics tests. Now, I would love to say I'd have 100% of people who need to quit alcohol when I show them their genetics test that indicate they need to quit alcohol. I would love to say that. That's not true. There are people who are just like, they need that last reality check, that last thing that's undeniable that you can't argue with. And they saw it in their genetics, like, okay, that's the last thing I needed. There's a certain relief that comes with the inarguability of one's genes.
Yeah.
There's like, okay,
because it's who you are.
It's it.
Yeah.
It's like you can argue all you want, but that's what you are.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Sam, I feel like I have so many more questions I'd love to ask you. We're running up on time. Kind of the last thing I want to get to is, and maybe just give a kind of a real brief, but how can our genetics help with longevity? You know, there's that's kind of another thing that's getting talked about a lot now. Like, how can we extend our life? Like, how can we live longer? You know, I think people have often thought, you know, we get 80, 90 years, maybe if we're lucky. I think that a lot of things with genetics and some of the research that's coming out, like, we're actually going to be able to live a lot longer than our grandparents did and live healthy and well, you know, like, I want to be able to still be doing push-ups when I'm 130, right? How is genetics testing evolving in a way that can help us live longer?
So if you know your map, then you know your reality, you know your boundaries.
Yeah.
If I didn't know that I was genetically exquisitely sensitive to carbs and to caffeine and to histamine and to inflammation, how do you think that's going to affect my longevity?
Yeah. Makes sense.
It's so the answer is the same. Know your map. I exercise, for example. I had one client of mine. He was a professional cyclist, 20,000 miles a year.
Wow.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, his fiber type was sprint, and he ground himself down into chronic debilitating disease. He was in the wrong sport.
Yeah.
Wrong sport. If people are athletes, man, you need to find out what your fiber type is.
Yeah.
So you don't do the wrong sport and you'll perform better in a different sport. And you need to find out what your safety profile is around the integrity of your collagen and how much inflammation will affect your muscles and potentially cause inflammation-induced muscle injury if you overexercise. So if people have red and yellow dots in their inflammation that affects their muscles, that create more muscle risk of muscle injury, or red and yellow dots in their collagen, it doesn't mean don't exercise. What it means is that you genetically have to focus as much on recovery as you do the actual exercise. And if you don't know that, you are going to cause massive amounts of damage for the long term. So exercise is not a blanket, it's good. I can literally walk into any CrossFit and know exactly who the hyperinflamers are just by looking around.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have that layer of water weight on them. They may be strong, but they're not cut. When you over-exercise beyond your genetic capacity, beyond your threshold to handle inflammation, your body will start to retain water. To do what? Very similar to histamine.
Yeah.
It will retain water to dilute the inflammatory chemicals from careening into and damaging cells. So you will swell with water to buy your liver and kidneys time to filter out the inflammatory chemicals. So this is why you can have athletes that they like take a week off from training and like then they look better, feel better, and then they come back and they're stronger and more athletic. And like, what, I stopped training? What happened? Because you deflamed.
Yeah.
You were over exercising. And like there's 3 types of exercise. There's exercise for your health versus exercise for your sport versus exercise for your sculpt.
Yeah.
Those are 3 different things. They don't always converge. In fact, rarely they do. Maybe the health and sculpt will if you're exercising in a way that makes you look healthier.
Yeah.
but not necessarily for like an iron, Mr. Universe or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm talking about the genes for health.
Yeah.
And if you are going to do exercise in a way for your sport or your sculpt in a way that's not ideal for your health, at least now you can buffer with some of the recommendations from your genes for your health to help improve your longevity despite your choices for your sport or your sculpt.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been so informational. I look forward to your podcast when you launch it here in a month or so. And you want to just end up telling everyone like where we can find you? Like if we want to, I for sure, for one, I'm going to be wanting to get a genetics test now to learn more about myself.
Totally.
Where can we find more information on you, and where can we specifically find information on where to get this genetics test?
So for people who want the genetics test, they can find their nearest practitioner by just going to FitGenesUSA.com, 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 and just click on find a practitioner, put in your info, and we'll connect you to the nearest practitioner to you. If people want to work with me privately on the functional medicine side of things, they're wanting to look at gut testing, mitochondria testing, lifestyle analysis, hormones, toxicity, mold, metals, etc. That's on drsamshay.com, drsamshay.com. So they're separate. You got the genetics piece on one side and personal practice on the other.
Cool. Well, Dr. Sam, this has been awesome, man.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for caring for Lily.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
She's sleeping on me.
Yeah.
I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up.